Welcome to BelievAble Talks, and I'm welcoming everyone watching this. And today we're launching a new series, BelievAble Conversations. I'm really excited about this. It will be will comprise of a number of interviews on religion, science, experience, God, spirituality, wherever the conversation takes us. And it is my privilege today to welcome author Clifford Goldstein. It's great to have you with us.
Glad to be here.
It's all the way from the United States. Yeah, this pandemic is...
I wish I were in Ireland right now. I like it over there.
Hopefully one day soon.
Yeah.
The pandemic has made it impossible for us to travel to a certain extent. But look, the technology still bridges, distance and time. Well, Cliff, I think that many people know you. Many people who will be watching this know you, but there will probably be some that may not know who you are. And I would like to invite you to share your story, share something about what you feel is important for people to know about who Clifford Goldstein is.
Well, I've been telling the same story now for 40 some years, and I could give you the 3-minute version or the hour and 20-minute version, and I'll give you a shorter version, though I would say to anybody who, hey, this catches your interest and you want to know a little more, just Google my name, Clifford Goldstein testimony, and you can find, I said any one of the different number of length versions, but I grew up in a very secular Jewish home. I used to joke the way we would keep the holidays is, we'd say they tried to kill us, they failed, let's eat. Okay, that was the extent of it. And I was really very much too raised in a postmodern environment. It was kind of live and let live. You have your views, that's fine. It's your truth. You have yours. And it never really hit me that it almost didn't matter which one was true. If that made you happy, fine. And because this idea that there was no overarching truth. And that's how, there was no meta-narrative. Jean-Francois Lyotard, I think the Canadian philosopher, had said about postmodernism. It's rejection of meta-narratives, and that was fine. But then I remember I was about 21 years old, and I know this story can be caricatured. I had a friend of mine I hadn't talked to in 40 years. He said, "Hey, Cliff, I heard you found God in a pizza." But I was in a pizza parlor, and I was eating a pizza, and I was reading a philosopher, and then it just hit me. Look, there was the pizza sitting on the table in front of me. And you could have had 100 different people with 100 different views on how the pizza got there. The god Marduk created it. Aliens dropped it out of the sky. It evolved, whatever. They could have started religions over their belief in the pizza. They could have died. They could have killed. And the thing is, maybe every one of them were wrong. Okay? I mean, it's possible nobody knew it. But what hit me was, regardless of any human knowledge, putting aside humans completely or whatever, there was this pizza. And somewhere out there was the explanation for the pizza, how it got there, why it got, whatever, just the basic questions. And then at that moment, and again, you might think, Mickey Mouse could have told you this, but at that moment, it just suddenly hit me. Hey, I'm here. The cosmos is here. Just as the pizza in and of itself did not have the explanation for itself. In and of itself, something had to explain it. It hit me that the universe was here, and something had to have explained something had to explain all that there is. Okay, the universe. If you believe in a multiverse, fine. I don't care how, and whatever you think this as if it's all an illusion. There's this British philosopher, Nick Bostrom, wrote this paper arguing we're all computer algorithms. And he had some interesting points. I didn't buy into his argument, but if that were the truth, that was fine. See, at that moment, what hit me at that moment, the pivotal moment for me this was 1976, okay, was the realization that truth as an absolute objective truth, okay, and as unpopular as that is, and I didn't like the idea either, okay, I didn't like it back then either. On the other hand, I was fascinated, but it suddenly hit me. Something had to explain it, and that was the truth had to exist. And this was the strange part that I still remember. I was 21, 22, and I walked through this pizza parlor. I walked out of the pizza parlor, and I was walking through the streets. I was in Florida, college. And I had I realized that truth, to this day, I can't be wrong about this. I defy anybody anywhere to tell me how I could possibly be wrong about my realization that there's something here, something had to explain it. Okay. Now, whether I or anyone could know, it's a total separate issue. I'm not talking about that. That's irrelevant right now to my point. But my point was, wow, absolute truth. Something has to explain all this. And I remember just thinking to myself, if it were humanly possible, because even though I knew that truth had to exist, the fact that truth had to exist and it did not follow logically, rationally, inductively, deductively in any way. It did not follow at all that I or anyone could ever know what it was. Okay, totally separate. And I realized that. But my thought to myself was, and I felt it so strongly, I felt it. I can remember to this day feeling a pain in my chest, thinking, oh, if it were humanly possible to know what this truth was. Again, what was about me at 21 that I would think that or wanted that? I have no idea. All I know is I realized that it had to exist.
Wow.
And I thought, if I could know it, I wanted to know it. I didn't care where it led me, what it cost me, what I had to suffer, what I had to give up. And all I know is 3 years later, I wound up Seventh-day Adventist. Okay. Now, what's very interesting too is this experience, what I had, this was really, and this is important, this was really the only truly, and I use that word loosely, intellectual, rational. I mean, again, I think I was at the pure, I love this kind of stuff, pure apodictic truth. Just pure deductive rationality. Something here, something had to explain it, okay? But that was the last, and everything else that happened to me up until I had my experience with God. That was the last, quote, logical, rational, objective thing that had happened to me.
Wow.
And see, it's funny. And as I said, I can get into more of the details. I'll tell you two things, and then we could move on.
Yes, of course.
We could move on. Two things. I'm only going to tell you one. I'll tell you one. What happened was, again, if you Google Clifford Goldstein testimony, you can get the whole spiel. But I had some subjective experiences which opened me up to that there had to be more out there. okay, that the atheistic, materialistic worldview that I had been raised on and educated on was way, way, way too narrow. It was, it's true as far as it goes. There are atoms and there is the void and there are the laws of nature. I mean, you can't, and they dominate to a certain degree. You can't deny that. But to limit reality to that, I started realizing, whoa. It's like you're staring through the peephole, and what you see, that's what you think all reality is. But anyway, I had been working on a novel. I had been working on a novel for 2.5 years, and it was my life. And then one night, after a bunch of things happened, the presence of the Lord Jesus Christ came to me in a room, and he said to me, Cliff, if you want me tonight, burn your novel. Okay. Burn your novel. And it said there's a whole lot of background, but the novel was my God. I was 23 years old. I put 2.5 years of my life into it. It was everything to me. And again, you think burn your book, but you need to know the background. But anyway, that night I burned the novel. Okay. I burned it knowing nothing. And I was a born again believer. And it's funny. I don't like equating myself in any way with the Apostle Paul. Okay, outside the fact we were Jews who once didn't like Christians or believers in Jesus, who became believers in Jesus. Okay, but when Saul of Tarsus was Saul of Tarsus, what did his study get him to do? Got him to persecute Christians. Yeah. Okay, and then he's going along on the road to Damascus, and zap. He has this supernatural experience, I don't want to use the word irrational because that's wrong, but this trans-rational experience. He's given a whole new set of first principles and then boom, put back into the world. Okay. And I'm telling you, this night in 1979, the night when I burned my novel, that's exactly what happened to me. I mean, I became a believer totally on an experience. Okay. The only intellectual thing was that a couple of years earlier when I knew truth had to exist. It wasn't study. It wasn't science. It wasn't logic. It wasn't reason. None of those things. I had this experience with God. And I became a believer. And then I read something years after by a church father, Saint Anselm. And this is 1,000 years before I was alive. He said, Credo ut intelligam. I believe in order that I may understand. And I realized that captured my experience. I became a believer totally on an experience. And then I have had now 40 some years to build the logical, rational, foundation for what I believe as far as that could take you. I would challenge anyone, anywhere to say faith is illogical or irrational. I would argue atheism is really more irrational and illogical than belief in a transcendent creator. But anyway, that's just a bit of a background.
Cliff, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it's really, really powerful. I mean, the idea that you came to that realization in a pizza place, sometimes people go on all kinds of pilgrimages and, trying to discover something. It's within us. And if we are open to just allow those thoughts to come and we begin to process and make sense of things. But I want to pose a question to you. Listening to your story, and I've read your story before. What do you say to those who say, well, this is very subjective, very subjective thing?
It is. You'd be a fool. You'd be a fool to believe in Jesus because I do. You'd be a fool to become a Seventh-day Adventist because I am. That's not what I'm telling you to do. I'm just saying, this is what happened to me. I had this subjective, look, a religion. The first command is you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. Hey, if that ain't subjective, I don't know what is. There is this totally subjective element to it, but it's based on an objective reality behind it. And I would just say, check it out. Seek. I was a seeker for truth no matter what. And this is what happened to me. Say, if you want it, you search for it, you wind up somewhere else. I can't judge you. I'm just saying, this is what happened to me. And if you were to ask, these are the reasons why after it happened to me, well, I believe it because of this. I believe it because of that. And I could truly say, and it's taken me a long time to come to this, the existence of God and the existence and the reality of his love is the most obvious truth I know. I didn't get here overnight. And someone could tell me I think you're full of it. No, fine, you can think that. And you might, I'm not going to blame you or judge you for it.
Yes.
But I've had these experiences, and then I've buttressed them, reading, studying, and I feel exceedingly, it is fun. Here's a funny thought too, though. Something that hit me number of years after I was a believer, as a born-again Christian, as a believer in Jesus. I'd say, what is the most important truth I know? And this hit me a number of years ago, and it helped me to put all the philosophy and all the logic and all the stuff that I eat up to help me, okay, it's got its role, but be careful. But what happened was, what is the most important truth I know? That Jesus died on the cross for my sins, and I can have salvation in him. Now, compared to that, whether you could step in the same river twice or whether philosophers should be kings, I mean, they got their role, but that's compared to that. Now, when I think about it, all the logic and reason in the world, I think can get you to an unmoved mover. I think can get you to a first cause. I would challenge anybody anywhere on that, okay? And natural theology, nature, could get you, I think, to an intelligent designer, to a creator, and so on. And, math, even I know there's some who claim math points them to the existence of higher dimensions. Math can get some people to believe in God. All these things that can get you to an unmoved mover, an intelligent designer, a first cause, whatever. And I believe that they can, but they can't get you to the most important truth you need to know. Jesus died for your sins. It's like, when you're in school and the answer, you do math class and the answer is 50. And you said, oh, I could have subtracted this from this and got there. I could have added this and this. And then you get to the answer. But there's the answer. And it hit me, the most important truth I could know is the truth that the only way I can know it is it had to have been revealed to me. It had to have been revealed to me. All these other things they'll never get you to the cross. So as I said, they could get you to a God, to an unmoved mover, a creator. And that was like very, very humbling to me.
Wow.
About all these other things. But anyway.
So Cliff, I think this is really, really important. So what you're saying is that, the proof for the existence of God is there. I mean, the rationale behind it, what makes sense and so on. You cannot get through that, or that evidence cannot speak to you unless you experiment. You go into this relational, subjective portal, if you want. Let's say a door. So that we're not misunderstood, where these things begin to speak and lead you to a God who makes sense, not just dogmatically, cognitively arriving to that point of realization. The relational side of it.
There is, as I said, all the logic and reason in the world could take you only so far. And then ultimately Jesus said, you must be born again. I mean, that's exceedingly personal. exceedingly subjective
Yes.
element to this whole thing. So that you look, we are subjective beings. You know, I have no doubt about the existence of objective reality, but I have also no doubt that it's totally inaccessible to us. I mean, I don't know how far you want to go with the Kantian thing with phenomena. You know, there's well, here's an example I tell people to make the point. I'll be in a meeting somewhere and I'll tell everybody, okay, nobody talk. It's quiet. Then I pull out my cell phone and let me see if I had something here right now. I wanted to see if I had, all right, okay. Now, see if it works.
And we're not going to eradicate COVID.
Can you hear this?
Yes.
Okay, now, where did this come from? Where did this originate in the phone? You know, this was there all the time in the world, all around me, as real as my voice, as real as this table, as real as the air I'm breathing. And yet our incredibly limited, our incredibly subjective senses made it totally inaccessible to us. Okay, so again, I use that just as a parable or whatever, a little experiment to show just how subjective, you know, the world does appear to us. But that does not mean, you've got to be careful with this. That does not mean there is not an objective reality out there. That does not mean that there's not objective truth. I don't know how there cannot be objective truth out there, okay? But we are always going to, as you said, we're going to have our own personal subjective experience. You know, Jesus said, I am the truth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty heavy statement to make.
Yeah.
But we are going to have our own subjective experience and relationship with him. And that's fine. That's the only experience you're going to have is going to be subjective. So anyway.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Cliff, I've got here a lot of questions. We're not going to be able to get, you know, through all of them, but I'm very happy that
you can do it again sometime. If you
of
want.
course. Thank you. Thank you. One of your latest articles that I came across is called The Logic of Existence. And actually in the description of our video, we're going to put the link so that people can access it and read it. And, you know, after I've read the article and listening to you now, I think that I understand it better. But, you know, where you're talking about the pizza that was not able to give a reason for it being there. But now let me take you to this question. And it's based on what you wrote. You know, Richard Dawkins speaks of the magic of reality. All right. And we're not going to go into that. But in your article, you speak of the miracle of our existence. Magic miracle. What is the miracle of our existence? What do you mean by that?
Let's even use the magic. If you want to use Dawkins, what does magic imply? It implies the magician. Okay, I don't care about the magic.
They can't get away from it.
Yeah, magic, fine, magic guy. You know, that's the image. In some ways, it's beyond magical. Okay, I mean, quantum physics alone. Man, to use, I mean, if you ever read any quantum physics, I've read so many popular books on it, I'm more lost now than ever, but nothing my faith asks me to believe wreaks more havoc on logic, reason, and common sense than nature at the most fundamental level, the quantum level. But again, to come back to your question, I mean, I believe we are a totally contingent universe. I mean, I certainly know, well, I'm a contingent being. The world existed fine before I got here. And I think would do fine, thank you, you know, if I were never here or after I were gone, you know, and the earth itself, you know, and the solar system, even what about the cosmos itself that makes it necessary? Okay, no matter what view, almost everybody now believes the universe were created. Okay, that means it once didn't exist.
Yeah.
Which means its existence is not necessary. Okay. And then I think ultimately there is a Greek Orthodox thinker. His name is David Bentley Hart. And I got issues with David Bentley. In fact, I'm writing something right now taking issue with him. But he wrote this book called The Experience of God. And he's got a section in there. It's a defense of what we call the cosmological argument.
Yeah.
It's that nothing created itself. As I said in the article, I didn't use that example. This water, think of it, I guess it's a can. Yeah, can. All right, Cliff, get it together. This can didn't create itself. The earth it sits on right here didn't create itself. The supercluster of galaxies that we exist in didn't create themselves. And how far back do you want to go? The universe itself, it all depends on its contingent things depending on something outside of it. And that's pure logic. Now, where you want to get way beyond logic is what I believe, and this is the truth that had to be told me. I am not going to figure this out with the telescope looking at the stars or splitting the atom or doing the double split experiment in the quantum realm. Is I believe that the power, just as the same way Picasso stands over and transcends any of his paintings. Yeah, I believe that the power, if you want, transcends he's got to be bigger and greater. He created time, space, matter, and energy, though I guess matter and energy are the same. And basically now they say space-time, it's one. So you got space-time and you got matter, energy, okay? Who's got to be greater than that? This being shrank down, took upon humanity, became the human, the baby Jesus Christ, then lived and suffered and died for our sins. That, if you could believe that, what else matters? What else matters? And so on. And again, though, that is the truth, that the only way you're going to know it is it has to be told to you. And then in your own way, you've got to experience the reality of the subjective experience of Jesus. But anyway, that's
so this is what you referred by the necessity, the fact that it is absolutely necessary for God to exist.
Well, I can't think of a way. Believe me, I've spent a lot of time. And I think a lot smarter people than I have spent a lot of time. And I've read their arguments. And I'm sorry, the best they could do, and I think I quoted in there this Brit Peter Atkins. He's a chemist. And he was a new atheist long before the new atheists were around. And I don't have the quote in front of me, but he says, I've used it numerous times. See, look, in the end, because nothing came from itself, there's only two options. Either an eternal existing God who always existed, whose existence was in himself, this necessary being, because he's the only thing that doesn't need an explanation. Okay? Either he created the universe. Now, if you're going to absolutely rule that out, where do they go? The universe is here. Any material thing they come up with, you're just going to push it back. So Atkins argues that the universe arose from absolutely nothing. And when he means nothing, these guys write these books, The Universe from Nothing, but then you get them in the corner. Well, it's a quantum fluctuation. It's a fall. The vacuum of empty space is not. Well, you're still miles apart. You're infinitely far apart from apps from nothing. And so Atkins says we have to accept that the universe rose from absolutely nothing, not a false vacuum patch, not quantum fluctuations. So in the end, you tell me, just simple logic, an eternal existing God, and in some ways it's hard to grasp, but again, we're blobs of matter. 3.5 pounds of chemical and tissues living for a spasm of time. Oh, so we can't comprehend that. Wow, big deal. That or absolutely nothing. And I don't know. It just seems logically to me that the universe rising from absolutely nothing. No, I think logic forces me. And as I've said, I have yet to read other people who don't like that. And I understand, because there was a time in my life when I didn't like that, able to wheedle out of that yet. I've yet to read anything where they've been, unless the universe arising from absolutely nothing, that is the most logical, that is really the best argument that I have seen. That's really where they're forced to go. And, if you can buy into that, well, then fine. You're free. You don't got to worry about, you don't got to worry about it. But, anyway, go ahead.
Brilliant. No, thank you very much. I like the conviction with which you speak, and but
it's logic. Fall by logic.
Absolutely.
Reader, listener, come in, email, write to you, show me where I'm wrong, and because I don't want to get out here and publicly say stupid things. If you can show me where I'm wrong, please, and I'll stop. So, and I mean it too.
This is great, and I think that part where we spoke about the subjective. I think this is the part where some people are very cautious and they do not want to entertain the idea of a subjective experience, allowing themselves to really spiritually connect with that something beyond the nothing, that's someone beyond the nothing that made everything, come into existence. Anyway, sometimes it's tough. I think that one of the problems that some people have is, this God would really have to be so big. It's incomprehensible to actually make sense of such a God that was able to create everything that exists. And because we can't make sense of it, we dismiss it. Doubt comes into the picture. I had some conversations, lately, and it worried me because to some people, to doubt means to sin. And now I'm talking about people, young people, who've been raised in a Christian tradition. It could be, different denominations, different churches. And then they get out of their bubble, go to university, go into the big world. And then all of a sudden they are met by very seemingly logical and persuasive voices that seem to give a different perspective.
And certainly,
what do you think about doubt? What is the role of the Peter Berger says, he wrote a book in Praise of Doubt with another sociologist. And I loved reading that book because I think that doubt has a place a role to play in one's understanding of spiritual matters. What's your view on that?
Well, again, I'm looking at things from the other end now. I'm 66. I've been doing this a while. That somebody asked me, and again, I've been a believer now. I was born again 1979. So you do the math. And a friend of mine a while back had asked me, a very skeptical guy. He was a theist, maybe. Logic forced him to believe there's something out there. Okay. Beyond that, he wasn't going to commit to anything. And he said to me once, do you ever doubt? And again, I'm looking now at the farther end. I said, no, not so much anymore, because when I do, I realize how irrational my doubt is. Okay. And he goes, irrational? I said, yeah, for me. And again, this is the subjective. For Clifford Goldstein, 66 years old, born again in 1979, having learned the things I've learned, studied the things I've studied, had the experiences I have had. Yeah, doubt is for me irrational, but it's not, I'm going to say it's not necessarily irrational for somebody on another end of a journey. Doubt means you've got, look, I still, see, saying I don't doubt or I don't doubt much is not the same as saying I don't have questions. I don't have a can opener works, okay? You know, and much less, you know, it was fascinating. I read this fascinating book years ago called Mathematics, The Loss of Certainty. And for years, people thought if you wanted absolute certainty, you're going to find it in mathematics. You're going to find, Euclidean geometry had to be the way. Well, by the early 20th century, the foundations of geometry, of all these things, you know, you got Kurt Gödel's famous incompleteness there. The bottom line, even with mathematics, there is a certain room for, quote, doubt. Okay, there's certain assumptions that you can't prove, and, you know, certain things that remain incomplete. Well, if it's going to be like that with math, how much more so the things for the existence of God? So I'd say, sure, doubting and having questions are two different things. And just keep asking questions, keep probing. You know, you're never, I mean, for me personally, I've had enough answered for me to where I don't have to worry about the things I don't have answered. Okay, there's still enough. I mean, questions. I mean, there's very little that I know that I haven't realized. There are whole elements of it that are filled with things I don't know. And you learn to live with that. You know, faith is not, what would faith be if it weren't, you know, the very word? You have faith in what you don't fully understand. But I still argue I have exceedingly logical and rational reasons for believing in what, in a sense, almost takes me a little bit beyond logic and reason. In other words, my logic and reason itself shows me the very limits of logic and reason itself. Though I still contend when it comes to the basic existence of God, logic and reason is almost deductively, almost apodictically on the side of those of us who believe in a creator God. Okay, on that, you know, the cross, as I said, the cross and all that, logic, it's never going to get you there. You're never going to get there. That ultimately it's revealed to you. Now, I've got incredibly good reasons, logical reasons for believing in what has been revealed to me. Okay, it's not like, well, God exists and everything else was an act of blind faith. As I said, for me at this point, to doubt is, with not saying I don't still have tons of questions, but to doubt is the most illogical thing for me to do. Now, I'm not saying somebody else is going to do that. And I respect.
You've been on a journey for decades.
40-some years. I didn't get here overnight. I didn't get, and believe me, the journey ain't over. Well, I don't know how much longer I got, but you know, too much Haagen-Dazs or something.
Cliff, I think that for today, there's just one more question that I would like to pose to you. And I'm going to go to one of the books that you wrote. And again, probably we're going to put a link to that one.
Please do.
I love
5 people to read my book in the whole world.
I love the title of this book.
Oh,
You've written many, so I have to mention which one. Baptizing the Devil.
Yeah.
I mean, I just, I love it. But here you speak of the seduction of Christianity. All right. I live in Ireland, and I'm sure everybody knows that, Ireland has had and still has a very troublesome relationship with religion at the moment, especially Christianity.
But this isn't a more politics than religion.
Of course, but to many people, when you speak about it, this is how they would define it. However, from my personal experience, I think from what I've seen, there's still a lot of hunger for making sense of existence, as you said. Entering into a relational encounter with this God that you speak about, the one beyond and behind the nothing that brought about everything. Now, what do you mean by the seduction of Christianity? What would you say is that seduction?
Well,
it's an interesting word that you're using in relation to Christianity.
In this context, it was being seduced. It was being, in some ways, duped by the claims of scientism.
Mm-hmm.
Now, please, I've got to be careful here because I've been accused of being a science denier. Okay. And in fact, I have one of my columns called The Confessions of a Science Denier. And you might want to, but the difference between science and scientism is important. Okay. And who could deny the power of science? Who could deny the technology? I mean, you and I right now on here, the technology. But the fact that, and this is a point that I tried to bring out in my book, the fact that the science works and the fact that you could get workable technology from it is a radically, radically different question from whether the theory behind it, whether the metaphysics behind it, whether that is true or not. And that is, and the seduction is, well, the science works. Therefore, whatever science says has to be true. And it was fascinating. When I was writing that book, I gave the manuscript to a scientist friend of mine. And I said, Bobby, anywhere I say something that you think is wrong, circle it. And I got a number of these big red circles because he was also a teacher. And anywhere that I had said or even implied that science was a search for truth, he circled. And he said to me, any honest scientist will tell you that science is not a search for truth. Okay. Now, even myself, I don't necessarily buy that. Okay. And there's different, Baptizing the Devil was a look at the philosophy of science. Okay. It was a look at the philosophy behind it. And there are different views on that. But the point is, all I wanted to say in the book was, just because something comes under the imprimatur of science doesn't mean we have to kowtow and bow down before it. And, well, science says it, therefore I have to surrender my religious belief to it because it's science. That's one of the great myths. Every age has its myths. And we say, well, we don't believe in myths because we're in the age of science and science. That's the great myth of our time. Well, we don't believe in Dagon, or we don't believe in Zeus, or we don't believe, in all that. But every age has its own myth. And I just wanted to help free people from, even Christians, from this seduction. Well, science says it. We have to surrender to it. And it's a powerful myth. And it's a very powerful seduction. But when you look at it a little more closely, it's like, whoa, let me wait a minute. No one's denying the utility of it. No one's denying that the cell phone works. But it's kind of fascinating that two of the scientific theories that our cell phone uses, general relativity for our GPS and quantum physics for just the cell phone itself, foundational principles, amazing accuracy. They contradict each other. And this whole thing called string theory.
Yes.
An attempt to try to stop these two absolute confirmed theories that work, to try to harmonize them. Again, no one's denying that they work.
Yeah.
But them working and being true are not necessarily the same. And that was all I was really trying to say with that book. But yeah, I would say to anybody, if you've got any listener here, if you're struggling with some of that, just pick up Baptizing the Devil. Read it. You might think I'm full of it, and not. But on the other hand, you might say, thank you. That answers. I have no doubt if you're a seeker for truth and you're struggling with faith and science and some of the challenges that come with in creation, then I think you'd find Baptizing the Devil of some help.
Absolutely.
So anyway.
Thank you so much, Cliff. I really appreciate you taking the time, listening to your story, how important it was for you to figure out and to really internalize this whole idea of truth. Truth grounds us. We need to believe that which guides us makes sense and it gives meaning to our lives. And I'm sure there are many people who are trying to figure out what that is, whether it can be found. And you've said some amazing things here. Look, you found it in a pizza parlor. I mean, this realization, it's just be there and just be in touch with yourself and your thoughts and your mind, your heart. And I think things will begin to happen. But then you also said something very important, to have it revealed to you. The revelation. It's so much bigger than us. It's so much bigger than everything that exists. We cannot comprehend it, but it can be revealed, packaged to us in a way that makes sense. And the best way it makes sense is in the person of Jesus Christ. So I'm gonna let you maybe conclude with that, with a few thoughts on Jesus.
Well, in the end, I mean, all you got to do, look at what Jesus says about himself. Okay. And what do you do? When I grew up, Jewish home, I remember my grandma saying, well, he was a prophet. He was a good man. Well, I'm sorry now, Grandma, that good man doesn't say I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. There's that famous C.S. Lewis quote about, saying that, Jesus didn't allow you that possibility. You either have to reject him as a lunatic or fraud, or as he said, fall down before him and worship him as the creator. And, again, I grew up in a Jewish home, secular. So just God and one was a problem. But growing up, you didn't even want to talk about Jesus in our house. It wasn't like, we remember we had a New Testament in the house. It was just a book, a book like all sorts of books. But I can't talk for anybody else. I'm just saying for me, it hit me. Truth had to exist. I wanted to know it if I could know it. Because again, the realization that it had to exist, this ontological question, there's a reality here. And me, the subject of the epistemological question, me knowing it, were totally separate things. But I thought, if I could know it, which is a big if, because it's a big, bad world out there, and we're these tiny little subjective creatures, these little brains, which, they're amazing things, but how much we're blobs of protoplasm, chemicals and neurons, in contrast to perhaps an infinite galaxy. And so what are really the odds in and of yourself of knowing it? In one level, it would be awfully hard. Unless, as we said, it was the power who created all this. knows what pathetic, subjective little blobs of protoplasm we really are, and has, in some miraculous ways, revealed himself to us and has revealed that truth to us. And anyway, that's what happened to me. That's what happened to me. And that was over 40 years ago. And I'm still here, still moving from that original experience. So anyway.
Thank you very much, Cliff. Thank you so much for sharing, your experience, your thoughts. Really appreciate it. And maybe we'll be able to continue this conversation at another time. But I think that for now, there's a good starting point for many people to just maybe pause and consider this amazing opportunity of encountering a God who is there. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.